everyone. My name is Julia Bertz. I'm an artistic photographer, and basically my artistic work deals with depersonalization and tension provoked by the environment and the inner self. And I would say a basic note in my work, the basic theme is identity. So I'm delighted to introduce Smooth. He is an artist, an art historian, and the curator of African art at the Hood Museum of Art, Dartmouth College in Hanover, USA. He's born in Nigeria, trained as a sculptor at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, where he earned a BA in Fine and Applied Art. He received a postgraduate diploma in museum and heritage studies from the University of Western Cape, South Africa, and a PhD in art history from Emory University, Atlanta, USA. He has participated in over 30 exhibitions and several artist residency and workshop programs in Africa, Europe, and the United States. His engagement as a curator also takes place in these countries and regions. For example, he will be the curator of the Dak'Art Biennial in 2014. He's also a recipient of several artist awards, grants, and academic scholarships and fellowships, among which are the Robert Sterling Clark Foundation Fellowship from 2012 and the Smithsonian Institutional Curatorial Fellowship 2012. Thank you.
Thank you very much for such a thank you very much for such a generous introduction. I'm glad to be here. Hello. So I'm drawing the title of my presentation from the theme of the symposium. So I call it Same, Different, Contemporary Art Practice from a Point of View. Point of view meaning the ways in which I think about art and the ways in which I think about artistic production, which is different, but at the same time it connects to the other person. And to get it to sort of start this conversation, I tend to see the artwork of every artist as a reflection of the artist's experience, a reflection of the artist's reality, a reflection of the artist's received knowledge, and also a reflection of the artist's passion. And from the earlier presentations today, we can all see how those works are the reflections of how they think about the world, how they negotiate their being in the world, and how they see themselves in relation to the next person. So yeah, hybridization and tradition is two of the big elephants in the room, and I'm happy a lot of people have asked the question, how does the earlier presentations connect to the theme, or the themes of the symposium. So I begin with a piece I called Between Two Worlds. It's a chalk pastel on paper, which I produced in 2010. Now, I trained as a sculptor, as the lady who introduced me mentioned, but over time I began to make pastels because I never had the luxury of an art studio. While I was back in Nigeria, I didn't have the luxury of an art studio, so making pastel paintings became the easiest way of depositing ideas I have on paper. And for me, I'm primarily an ideas person, and what I do basically is to find the best medium that expresses, the best medium that translates a particular idea at any point in time. Something I think Bassam also mentioned in his presentation. So I also do that. So this piece, Between Two Worlds, sort of reconciles my being a Nigerian and my current station in the United States. What you see is a symbol called the Nsibide symbol. It's is a part of it's a pictogram that is autochthonous to eastern Nigeria, where I am from, and southern Cameroons. It's a symbol of unity. It's a symbol of marriage. It's a symbol of togetherness. And so what I do with this symbol is to reconcile two worlds, my Nigerian world and, if you like, my contemporary status as being someone who lives in the United States. So it brings the two worlds together. And again, the sign belongs to a traditional deposit of aesthetics, which I draw from in my pastels. So this is one. And then in this other much larger pastel work, painting, I call them paintings, I sort of explore, again, the symbols, but then how the symbols describes my marital status. So what you find is a symbolic representation of myself, my wife, and my son. And then I couch that with the symbols. Because the symbols basically expresses quotidian experience, but I try to think about the symbols in a contemporary sense rather than the ways in which they were used in the past. In the past, these symbols were used by a secret society in eastern Nigeria, and when I say in the past, I mean the pre-colonial past in eastern Nigeria and southern Cameroon, and you would be an initiate for you to be able to access the meaning attached to those symbols. But in a contemporary sense, a lot of contemporary Nigerian artists have been using the symbols, and I'm one of those people who use the symbols because of the inherent meanings attached to those symbols, but also for their design quality, their aesthetic presence. That's part of the reason why I use those symbols. So beyond me, I'm showing you the work of Owusu Ankoma, a Ghanaian artist who also work with symbols. They are Adinkra symbols from Ghana. He's an artist who's based in Bremen in Germany. And this piece is called Starkid. The artist primarily thinks about cosmic forces and the ways in which they talk about unity and peace. And so the way I read this work is you have three muscular men, which is a leitmotif you find in all his works. He works with these muscular figures, which he places he superimposes on this picture surface, which he breaks up with this Adinkra symbols. And basically, the three muscular figures are pointing to a child, a star child. And one could read this in a biblical sense as the three wise men pointing out Jesus. One can read it in that sense of the three wise men pointing out to the Prince of Peace. But what's the reason why I'm using the work of this artist is the ways in which the artist, like myself, works with tradition and contemporaneity simultaneously. This is an artist, some of us might be familiar with her. He's an Algerian artist, Rachid Korachi, who works between Tunis and Morocco. I believe he works between the two places, and also London. So again, these are Arabic scripts which the artist is able to transform into contemporary work of art. So again, in showing this artist and in showing Owusu Ankoma, in showing my work, I'm looking at the ways in which artists engage with what people call hybridization, although it's a word I don't normally want to use because it comes with so many associations, but the ways in which artists draw from a certain threshold of tradition and try to remake those traditions in a contemporary way, but also insisting on a certain vocabulary of engagement with those traditions. Now we'll move to what I call points of reference. So for me, in my art, I draw a lot from history. I think of history as that sense of remembering the past, but also that sense of thinking about the present by looking at those germane issues that we deal with every day. So for me, in some of my works, I've dealt with globalization, I've dealt with memory, which is one theme that kept on recurring this morning. So I deal with those themes from a historical perspective, from a personal perspective, from a collective perspective, but also from a cultural, local, and global perspectives. Now, this was part of, these works were the result of a residency I did in Kenya in 2005. And at the end of the residency, there was an exhibition. In the residency, the residency was the first public art residency by the Kona Trust, which is a non-governmental organization that promotes arts and culture in Nairobi. So in residence, I was in residence with an American artist and a Japanese artist, and the theme of at the end of the day, the theme of our exhibition was yesterday, today, tomorrow. Jana, Keno, can't remember the words again in Swahili. So for my work in the residency, I was attracted to Kenyan architecture. Kenyan architecture, where the build. So to make a building, you create blocks, and then they build, and then there's no final film of cement to cover the blocks at the end of the building. So I was attracted to that kind of form, and so I decided I was going to explore that form, in a formalistic sense, but looking at space, time, and history, which are things I deal with several in my work. So this space is what I call regeneration, which looks back at history, but also look into the future. Africa is very important to me in my work, and I tend to look at Africa's colonial history because although I wasn't born in the colonial period, whatever happened in the colonial period continues to reverberate in what we call the post-colonial period. So this work sort of allows me to think beyond some of our problems and to think about ways in which the way Africa is defined in the global consciousness or in the global imaginary can be shifted. In the global imaginary, we think of Africa as a place of disease, as a place of poverty, as a place of wars and all that. And so I'm moving beyond that to think about ways in which we can think of a new renaissance, which I call regeneration. And to do that, I use live plants, but also light bulbs, which I use a lot. The light bulbs meaning speaks to the ephemerality of life, not only in Africa, but elsewhere. Now, this is also part of the works I produced there. It's called Lighted World, Space-Time History. It's self-explanatory. I was just working formalistically with architectural forms in Kenya, but connecting it to notions of history, time, and place. This is a close-up of one of the works I made in Kenya. I call it single story, multiple stories. This work is actually about 6 feet tall, and it's two. And in the work, what I had was curios and African art objects placed in the different blocks or bricks. And then I also had text written on plexiglass. And those texts drew from historical books. So for example, in one of the texts is a famous statement by the explorer, Henry Morton Stanley, the American explorer who was a journalist, who discovered David Livingstone, who a lot thought was dead. And then he said, Henry Livingstone, Dr. Livingstone, I presume. So I was dealing with that colonial history as well, the idea of discovery in that era, but also to raise questions about the notion of discovery. So, for example, there's a place called Jinja in Uganda. It's a place where the people say Jinja is the source of the river Nile, and it was discovered, if I remember, by David Livingstone. And so the question I asked while I was doing this project was, how did David Livingstone come upon the source of the river Nile if he wasn't taken to that source by some local people? So the question becomes, who discovers what, where, and how? And so I was dealing with those histories and connecting those colonial history to the contemporary realities in Africa, vis-a-vis the way Africa is represented in the global imaginary. So this again is the way the works were installed in Kenya. Now, this is a piece I produced in 2006 in Egypt at an artist workshop and in Alexandria, called Moments, Impression, Reflections. The work followed works I produced, which I'm not showing here, but at a residency in Cape Town in the same year. At that point, I was dealing with notions of memory, being personal and also collective. And so what I did in the residency, in the workshop in Egypt, was to ask fellow artists to, in 2 short sentences, tell me what their initial impressions of Egypt were when they arrived. And I now got someone who could speak Arabic to help me translate those impressions in Arabic. And I wrote that interpretation, or the translation on sand. The idea was I was playing with memory as hard copy and memory as also ephemeral. So a component of the installation were photographs of sections of Egypt and the writing by the artist. So I was dealing with memory as hard copy, but also as an ephemeral process. In 2007, I was in residence at the Art OMA in New York, and I was fortunate to get a fellowship by Clinton's Global Initiative for Peace. And because I got the fellowship, I was supposed to do a piece that engaged with peace and conflict. And so I did this piece in the light of conflict, which was a site-specific room installation. And you can see in the installation an image of a man and a woman, and then the image of dark and light. So I was looking at the idea of binary opposition, which one finds in African philosophy. The idea of man, woman, outside, inside, light, dark. So I was engaging with all that. And the text on the wall are actually my poetry. I wrote a very deep and dark poetry about issues of conflict, and then I used those texts as part of the installation. In 2011, I was invited to a workshop in Luxembourg, and the title of the workshop was "Other Possible Worlds: The Other Side of Utopia," which was a second platform of a project that was carried out at the ZHdK in Berlin. In Luxembourg, I decided I was going to do a project I called One Man's Utopia is Another Man's Dystopia. And so what you see here is I created a map of the world with utopian and dystopian text, drawn from Plato's Republic to Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart to more recent, to 1984, for example, by George Orwell's 1984, to more recent dystopian and utopian texts. And I created this pastiche of the globe. And then I superimposed the map of the world on the map of Luxembourg. I found Luxembourg a very interesting space. It's a very tiny country, but in a country that is really highly cosmopolitan in the sense that people speak on the average 4 or 5 languages. And I understand it's something you find also in Zurich. People are multilingual in Zurich. So I found that very fascinating because of the ways in which it can be utopian in that sense, that one is empowered with the ability to speak several languages. But then the other thing I did with the installation was to sort of map out the different continents of the world. And then I had collected historical postcards from different parts of the world. But what I did was to shift those postcards, shift what they represent, and get them to inhabit new spaces. So for example, postcards from Africa, or postcards that apparently speak to Africa, or colonial Africa, or contemporary Africa, I moved those postcards to Latin America. Postcards from Latin America, I moved those postcards to Asia. Postcards from Asia, I moved those postcards to, say, Europe. And so the idea being that for a lot of people in Africa, going to Europe or going to the West is that sense of utopia. It's this very perfect place where one wants to inhabit. And for a lot of people in the West, the idea of Africa is that sense of dystopia. It's this place where nothing works. So I was wondering if you begin to shift our understanding of what places represent. How else can we conceptualize cartography or the map of the world? And then I finished, the other component in the installation was a compass, a Welsh compass, which I picked up and then inscribed a text by a very famous text by Oscar Wilde. And you find this text in several utopian texts and novels that were written in the 70s and early 80s, wherein Oscar Wilde said, a map of the world that does not include utopia is not worth looking at, you know, and so it sort of sums up what I was trying to do with the installation. So now, it's already 20 minutes, so I'm going to quickly begin to run. Okay, so I have 2 minutes. So in 2010, I got some grants from my university while I was doing my PhD, Emory University, it's called the Creativity Grant. So I decided to make some artwork after a long layoff from not making art. When I got into the PhD, I stopped for a while making art. I just focused on my studies. And the piece, Doppelganger, the film, was to look at my life, my former life as an artist, an itinerant artist, and my new life, my new reality as an academic, and the struggles and the tensions between the two. But how the two are also is an encapsulation of myself, and that was what the film was about. If we have time, I'll show the film. So this is another still from the video film. I'll show it later. So I also work in a collective with a good friend of mine who's a sound artist. So last year we were commissioned to do a piece by Waterman's Art Center in the UK as part of the Olympic season. And so we decided to take the theme of unity as our subject. And unity, of course, speaks to the high ideals of the Olympic, the idea of bringing people together in the spirit of the Olympic Games. And again, the unity is 5 letters that actually represent the 5 Olympic rings. And so yeah, and the 5 Olympic rings have, one is colored blue, one is colored yellow, one is colored black, one is colored green, and one is colored red. So we decided to work with that the trope of the Olympic Games, the colors, what the ring symbolized. The ring brings people together. But then to create a maze, which is not clear if you're navigating the maze, because it's encompassed an entire gallery space. But from top, it's obvious that it's unity. But if you were to navigate the maze, you wouldn't understand. You wouldn't read it as unity because you wouldn't know. But also, we had LED lights wired in the different colors, and then the LED, and then the motion sensors that responded to human presence. So for us, it was important for us to make a piece to co-produce a piece, not only as a collective, but with the audience. So the work was not complete without human presence. And so for the work to be fully lighted, it had to be inhabited by an audience. And so while the audience were moving through the work, the installation, it lighted. And when it was fully invaded by the audience, the entire installation lighted up in the different colors of the Olympic Games as a symbol of the Olympic spirit. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Smooth. Who would like to ask a question? On? Just wait, please, till I've got the mic.
Thank you very much, Ugochukwu, and I enjoyed this presentation. And we spoke already yesterday at dinner about the complex process of one might call borrowing, appropriation. There are many terms for that. Some of them are maybe misnomers. But when you engage, I'm particularly interested with the traditional writing amongst the Igbo, is that right? But there are other systems, of course, of writing. What are your sources? Are these the published and documented sources on this? Are you going to people yourself who still practice this tradition? I'm just wondering what your own process of approximation to these sources is.
Okay. Yeah. So I drew. In the beginning, when I started, I drew from what other artists were already working with, some contemporary artists who were working with that. But with time, when I began to dig deep, I went back to colonial archives. So there are colonial texts where you find the early colonial officers who worked in the eastern Nigeria. The early anthropologists who also doubled as colonial officers wrote some of the earlier texts on this, and so they had in those texts you could find the symbols, the ones that were revealed to them. They documented the symbols with some of their meanings, and so I drew a lot from those, and also cross-checked with the body of those texts the forms of the symbols that are already in circulation or in use by some artists. So I compared both. Some other artists I know actually move beyond just appropriating the symbols to actually inventing their own symbols. So for example, Owusu Ankoma, the Ghanaian artist who draws some Adinkra symbols, actually invents his own, looking towards Chinese scripts, you know. But at the moment, I've not begun to invent. Actually, when I use the symbols for their inherent meaning. So for example, a very easy read of this symbol is unity. It's a symbol of marriage, you know. In using this symbol as a symbol of unity, I use it to bring my two immediate realities together. So that's the ways in which I use a symbol. I use it for its aesthetic quality, but also for their implicit meaning. Yeah.
So if I understood you rightly, and also if you can show us once more the second.
The second one.
Yeah, this one. You are using the symbol. In what way are the symbols transformed or not? Because then later you showed the work of the Tunisian Moroccan artist. Are you trying to reproduce and recreate the symbols, or are you transforming them? Perhaps both processes are inevitably and intentionally at work.
I think so. I mean, I think so. I think I'm actually. I think in this work, I'm actually transforming the symbols. I wasn't necessarily using the symbols here for their inherent meaning in this context. I was just using the symbols as a representation of my being. Mm-hmm. So it sort of speaks to my roots in a way, but also putting it in relation to, like I said, my new status as a husband, a father, and also living elsewhere. So if you look closely, that's the barcode symbol. It's a symbol of capitalism to show that I'm in this.
I was wondering.
Yeah, I'm in this American space where driven by capital. So how those things sort of become parts of the new me, so to say. So I have this aspects of me that is Nigerian, but also I'm inhabiting a new space and all that comes with being in a new space, you know. But not in that hybrid sense, as some people are willing to say. I don't consider myself a hybrid. I make conscious decisions to take things and use things. I mean, for me, that sense of hybridity is an unconscious transformation. One can see it as an unconscious transformation, or a process of placing label on something, on someone, because someone draws from elsewhere, you know. So.
Yeah. And I think, I just throw that in the discussion. I perhaps have to say a little bit more about that, or not. It depends how everything develops on Wednesday. But I would say contentiously, and I'm not the first to say that, perhaps there is no hybrid after all, or the other way around. Actually, everything is hybrid,
it's a hybrid
already.
It's hybrid, yeah.
There is nothing before hybridity.
Nothing.
No.
Nothing.
You cannot.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yes, if I may say something to that. I mean, there's a huge discussion about hybrid, looking at who is using the word hybrid in what context. And that shows very contradictory and very interesting phenomena. Anahita and myself That's why we left it open. I mean, it has been said that culture anyway, whatever culture you take, is already hybrid. Nevertheless, if you look at the specific point of view of a specific art notion that has been ruling contemporary art in the 20th century, you obviously have to say that there are major shifts going on. So in a way we can say it was more like a model or a table where we wanted to talk about these issues by using this very difficult term. I agree with you. But I think it works fine so far.
I think so.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying on a personal level, I mean, we can theorize hybridity in a different context, but I'm speaking as an artist. And so I tend to run away from that when I speak as an artist. Yeah.
I saw Nana raising her hand. Are there other questions that we see? Who else would like to, who has a further question? Okay, Nana, please.
And just as a comment, of course, obviously hybrid can be used as a term of closure by putting someone in a box and putting hybrid on it. Yeah. I was curious to talk about your points of reference. You're an academic, you're a theorist, you're a curator, and you're an artist. And you, obviously, for writing the PhD, you had to put your fine art practice on hold for some time. So that was like, it excludes, but I would like to hear more about the relation of your curatorial practice and your own artistic practice. And one of the reasons when you first started about presenting the work you developed in Kenya, at first I thought curatorial, and then I realized, no, you're talking about, but the relation here is that you created a spatial installation, which I think isn't so different to the curatorial process, because it's both, and the way you talked about the the work you did for London, where you said, oh, it had to be also co-produced by the audience. So to put the question a little bit more focused, your curatorial and your artistic work in relation to the engaging to the audience, what is it? Is it sort of parallel? Is there a mutual interest, or in creating an audience but with different tools?
Well, I tend to wear, I mean, of course, I wear different caps, but the caps are all interrelated. So when I'm making art, I'm thinking curatorially. Unfortunately, that's the way it works for me. But I'm also thinking art historically. So, yeah, I'm thinking art historically. And I try, in this presentation, you can see I draw a lot from art history, because I can't run away from that. That's the way I think. And because I view curation as something very active, and I think even artists, every artist is a curator, unfortunately, because there's a conscious aesthetic decisions being made in the production of an art piece, but also in the ways in which you want people to have access to the art piece. There's a curatorial process involved. So in terms of in Unity, in terms of Unity, already we were, my friend and I, we were restricted by the theme. Well, I wouldn't say restricted. I mean, you can't be restricted, but we weren't restricted. It was a theme that we liked. The theme was it was a digital media festival. And it was going to happen in the context of the Olympic season. And we were looking for artists to represent the different continents. So my friend and I, in a way, represented Africa in the context of that exhibition. And so we were looking at a piece that not only engaged with the Olympic Games, but also engaged with globalization, which is something I deal with a lot in other works. But although the Unity sort of speaks to the fine lines or the fine points of the Olympic Games, it's not as if we are not aware of the obverse of those fine lines. The fact that the Olympic Games only happen in spaces of wealth, you know. The fact that the games that are the so-called games or sports in the Olympic Games are selected represent the games of a specific context of people, I mean, we're aware of all that. I mean, there's no African game that is included in the Olympic Games. We're aware of that. But we're at focus, I mean, our focus is on the fine points of the Olympic Games, which is about unifying people from all parts of the world. And you cannot unify people if your work doesn't include those people. You know, so the idea was to make a piece that will need the audience to be complete. Yeah, so that's it.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we will come back to this during panel discussion. Thank you very much.